In domain 5, you will understand Azure identity, governance, privacy, and compliance features. Authentication versus authorization. Authentication means confirming your own identity. In even more simpler terms, authentication is the process of verifying oneself. Authentication is about validating your credentials such as username or user ID and password to verify your identity. The system checks whether you are authorized persons or you have credentials for authentications, whether in public or private networks. System authenticates the user identity through login, password. Usually, authentication is done by a username and password, although there are various ways to be authenticated. Authentication factors determine the many different elements the system uses to verify one's identity before granting the individual access to anything. An individual's identity can be determined by what person knows, and when it comes to security, at least two or all the three authentication factors must be verified in order to grant someone permission to system. Based on security level, authentication factors can vary from one of the following: single factor authentications. The single factor authentication is the simplest form of authentication method which requires password to grant user access to particular systems such as website or a network. The person can request access to a system using only one of the credentials to verify one's identity. For example, only requiring a password against username would be a way to verify login credentials using single factor authentications. Next is two factor authentications. In two factor authentications, the authentication requires a two-step verification process which does not only require a username and password but also a piece of information only the user knows. Using a username and password along with the confidential information makes it that much harder for hackers to steal the valuable and personal data. Next we have multi-factor authentications. Multi-factor authentication is most advanced method of authentications which requires two or more level of security from independent categories of authentication to grant user access to system. This form of authentication utilizes factors that are independent of each other in order to eliminate any data exposure. It is common for financial organizations, banks, and law enforcement agencies to use multi-factor authentications. Next, we'll look at what is authorization. Authorization is the act of granting an authenticated party permission to do something. It specifies what data you are allowed to access and what you can do with that data. Authorization is sometimes called as auth. The Microsoft Identity Platform uses OAuth 2.0 protocol for handling authorizations. Authorization means being allowed access to systems. In even more simpler terms, authorization is the process of verifying what we have access to. Authorization occurs after your identity is successfully authenticated by the system, which therefore gives you a full access to resources such as informations, files, databases, funds, etc. However, authorization verifies your rights to grant you access to resources only after determining your ability to access the systems and up to what extent. In other words, authorization is the process to determine whether the authenticated user has access to particular resources. A good example of this once verifying and confirming employee ID and password through authentications. And the next step would be determining which employee has access to which floor, and that is done through authorization. Next, we will look at the differences between authentication versus authorization. Authentication confirms your identity to grant access to a system, whereas authorization determines whether you are authorized to access those resources. Authentication is a process of validating user credentials to gain user access. Authorization is the process of verifying whether access is allowed or not. Authentication determines whether user is what he claims to be. Authorization determines what user can and cannot access. Authentication usually requires username and password, whereas authorization may vary depending on security levels. Authentication is the first step of authorization. Authorization is done after successful authentications. Example of authentication is students at particular university are requiring to authenticate themselves before accessing the student link of university official website. This is called authentication. Example of authorization determines exactly what information the students are authorized to access on university website after successful authentication. Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is Microsoft cloud-based identity and access management service, which helps your employee sign in and access resources either in external or internal resources. External resources such as Microsoft 365, Azure Portal, and thousands of other SaaS applications. Internal resources such as apps on your corporate network and intranet, along with any cloud apps developed by your own organization. Azure AD is intended for IT admins, app developers, Microsoft 365, Office 365, Dynamics CRM, online subscribers. IT admins. As IT admin, you can use Azure AD to control access to your app resources based on your business requirement. For example, you can use Azure AD to require multi-factor authentications when accessing important organizational resources. Additionally, you can use Azure AD to automate user provisioning between your existing Windows Server AD and your cloud apps, including Microsoft 365. Finally, Azure AD gives you powerful tool to automatically help protect your user identities and credentials and to meet your access governance requirement. Azure AD is also used for app developers. As app developers, you can use Azure AD as a standard-based approach for adding single sign-on to your app, allowing it to work with user pre-existing credentials. Azure AD also provides APIs that can help you build personalized app experiences using existing organizational data. Azure AD is also used with Microsoft 65, Office 65, and Dynamics CRM online subscribers. As a subscriber, you are already using Azure AD. Each Microsoft 65, Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics CRM online tenant is automatically an Azure AD tenant. You can immediately start to manage access to your integrated cloud apps. Azure AD licenses include Azure AD Free, Azure Active Directory Premium P1, Azure Active Directory Premium P2, and Pay As You Go feature license. First, we'll look at Azure Active Directory Free. Azure Active Directory Free provides users and groups management on-premises data synchronization, basic reports, self-service passwords, password change for cloud users, and single sign-on across Microsoft 365 and many other SaaS apps. Azure Active Directory Premium P1. In addition to free features, P1 also lets your hybrid users access both on-premises and cloud resources. It also supports advanced administrations such as dynamic groups, self-service group management, Microsoft Identity Manager, and cloud write back capabilities, which allows self-service password reset for your on-premise users. Azure Active Directory Premium P2. In addition to free and P1 features, P2 also offers Azure Active Directory identity protection to help risk-based conditional access to your apps and critical company data and privileged identity management to help discover, restrict, and monitor administrators. Finally, we have Pay As You Go feature license. You can also get additional feature license such as Azure Active Directory Business to Customer. B2C can help you provide identity and access management solutions for your customer-facing apps. Azure AD features. We have different Azure AD features. We will look at some of the Azure AD features. The first one is application management. Application management manage your cloud and on-premise apps using application proxy, single sign-on, the apps My Apps portal, and software as a service apps. Next is authentications. Authentications helps you to manage Azure Active Directory, self-service password reset, multi-factor authentication, custom banned password list, and smart lockout. Azure Active Directory for developers. It helps to build apps that sends in all Microsoft identities, get tokens to all call Microsoft Graph, other Microsoft APIs or custom APIs. Business to business. B2B manage your guest users and external partners while maintaining control over your own corporate data. Business to customer. B2C customize and control how user signs up and signs in and manage their profile when using your apps. Conditional access. Conditional access manages access to your cloud apps Device management. Device management manages how cloud or on-premise devices access your corporate data. Next, we have domain services. Domain services joins Azure virtual machines to a domain without using domain controllers. Enterprise users. Enterprise users manage license assignment, access to apps, and set up delegate using groups and administrator roles. Hybrid identity. Using hybrid identity, you can use Azure Active Directory Connect and Connect Health to provide single user identity for authentication and authorization to all resources regardless of locations. Next is identity governance. Identity governance helps you to manage your organizational identity through employee, business partner, vendor service, and apps access control. You can also perform access reuse, identity protections. Next is identity protections. Identity protection helps us detect potential vulnerabilities affecting your organization identities, configure policies to respond to suspicious actions, and then take appropriate action to resolve them. Next, we have manage identities for Azure resources. Manage identities for Azure resources provides your Azure services with automatically managed identity in Azure AD that can authenticate any Azure AD supported authenticated services, including Key Vault. Next is privilege identity management, which is also called as PIM. PIM helps us to manage, control, and monitor access within your organization. This feature includes access to resources in Azure AD and Azure and other Microsoft online services like Microsoft 365 and Intune. Finally, we have reports and monitoring. Reports and monitoring helps in gain insight into security and usage pattern into your environment. Azure AD key terms. Next, we'll look at some of the Azure AD key terminologies to be remembered. First one is identity, a thing that can be authenticated. Identity can be user with a username and password. Identities also include applications or other servers that may require authentications through secret keys or certificates. Next term is account. An identity that has data associated with it. You cannot have an account without an identity. Next, we have Azure AD account. Azure AD account is an identity created through Azure AD or another Microsoft Cloud service such as Microsoft 365. Identities are stored in Azure AD and accessible to your organization cloud service subscriptions. This account is also sometimes called work or school account. Next, we have account administrator. Account administrator is a classic subscription administrator role in conceptually the building owner of a subscriptions. This role has access to Azure Account Center and enables you to manage all the subscriptions in an account. Next, we have service administrator. Service administrator is a classic subscription administrator role, enables you to manage all Azure resources, including access. This role has the equivalent access of a user who is assigned the owner role at a subscription scope. Next, we have owner. Owner is a role that helps you to manage all Azure resources, including access. This role built on newer authorization systems called Azure Role-Based Access Control, which is also called as RBAC, that provides fine-grained access management to Azure resources. Next, we have Azure AD Global Administrator. This administrator role is automatically assigned to whomever created the Azure AD tenant. Global administrators can do all the administrative functions for Azure AD and any services that federate to Azure AD, such as Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and Skype for Business Online. You can have multiple global administrators, but only global administrators can assign administrator roles. Next, we have Azure subscriptions. Azure subscription is used to pay for Azure cloud services. You can have many subscriptions and they are linked to a credit card. Azure Tenant. Azure Tenant is a dedicated and trusted instance of Azure AD that is automatically created when your organization signs up for a Microsoft Cloud Service subscriptions such as Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Intune, or Microsoft 365. And Azure Tenant represent a single organizations. A single tenant is a Azure tenant that access other services in a dedicated environment are considered to a single tenant. Multi-tenant. Multi-tenant is Azure tenant that access other services in a shared environment across multiple organizations and are considered as multi-tenant. Next, we have Azure Active Directory, AD Directory. which is also called as AD directory. Each Azure tenant has dedicated and trusted Azure AD directory. The Azure AD directory includes tenants, users, groups, and apps, and is used to perform identity and access management functions for tenant resources. Next, we have custom domain. Every new Azure AD directory comes with the initial domain name. A domain name may be like domain name dot microsoft.com. In addition to initial domain name, you can also add your organization domain names, which includes the names you use to do business and your users use to access your organization resources to a list. Adding the custom domains helps you to create a username that are familiar to users. For example, alien at contest.com. This is example of your custom domain. Finally, we have a Microsoft account, personal account that provides access to your customer-oriented Microsoft products and cloud services such as Outlook, OneDrive, Xbox Live, or Microsoft 365. Your Microsoft account is created and stored in Microsoft Consumer Identity Account System that is run by Microsoft. Conditional access. Conditional access is a tool used by Azure Active Directory to bring signals together to make decisions and enforce organizational policies. The modern security perimeter now extends beyond an organization network to include user and device identity. Organizations can utilize these identities signals as part of the access control decision. Conditional access is at the heart of new identity-driven control plane. Conditional access policies are the simplest or if then statement. If a user wants to access the resources, then they must complete an action. Example, a payroll manager wants to access the payroll applications and is required to perform multi-factor authentication to access it. By using conditional access policies, you can apply right access control when needed to keep your organization secure and stay out of your users' way when not needed. Multi-factor authentication, which is also called as MFA. Multi-factor authentication is a process where a user is prompted during the signing process for an additional form of identifications, such as to enter a code on their cell phone or to provide a fingerprint scan. If you only use password to authenticate a user, it leaves an insecure vector for attack. If the password is weak or has been exposed elsewhere, it is really a user signing in with the username and password, or it is an attacker. When you require a second form of authentication, security is increased as this additional factor isn't something that isn't easy for attacker to obtain and duplicate. User can register themselves for both self-service password reset and Azure AD multi-factor authentication in one step to simplify onboarding the experience. Administrators can define what forms of secondary authentication can be used. Azure AD multi-factor authentication can be also required when user performs a self-service password reset to further secure the process. Azure AD multi-factor authentication helps safeguard access to data and applications while maintaining simplicity for users. It provides additional security by requiring a second form of authentications and delivers strong authentication through a range of easy to use authentication methods. Users may or may not challenge for MFA based on configuration decision that an administrator makes. The application or services don't need to make any changes to use Azure AD multi-factor authentications. The verification prompts are part of the Azure AD sign-in events, which automatically request and processes the MFA challenges when required. Azure AD single sign-on, which is also called as SSO. Azure Active Directory seamless single sign-on automatically signs user in whether they are on their corporate devices connected to a corporate network. When enabled, users don't need to type their passwords to sign into Azure AD and usually even type their usernames. This feature provides user easy access to your cloud-based applications without needing any additional on-premises components. Single sign-on means a user doesn't have to sign into every application they use. The user logs in once and the credential is used for other apps too. If your end users doesn't need to much care about SSO details, you just want to use the app that make the you productive without having to type your password. Web applications are incredibly popular. Web apps are hosted by various companies and made available as a service. Some popular examples of web apps include Microsoft 365, GitHub, and Salesforce. And there are thousands of other people access web apps using web browsers on the computer. Single sign-on makes it possible for people to navigate between the various web apps without having to sign into multiple times. Role-based access control, which is also called as RBAC. Azure Role-based access control helps you to manage who has access to Azure resources, what they can do with those resources, and what areas they have access to. Azure Role-Based Access Control is an authorization system built on Azure Resource Manager that provides fine-grained access management of Azure resources. Here are some examples of what you can do with Azure Role-Based Access Control. With Azure Role-Based Access Control, you can allow one user to manage virtual machine in a subscriptions and another user to manage virtual networks. You can also allow DBA group to manage SQL databases in a subscriptions. With Azure Role-Based Access Controller, you can allow a user to manage all resource groups such as virtual machines, websites, and subnets. You can also allow application to access all resources in a resource group. Role-based access control consists of following components: security principle, role definition, scope, and role assignments. First, we'll look at security principle. A security principle is an object that represents a user, group, service principal, or managed entity that is requesting access to Azure resources. You can assign a role to any of these security principles. Next, we have role definitions. A role definition is a collection of permissions. It is typically just called a role. Role definition lists operation that can be performed such as read, write, and delete. Role can be high level like owner or switch like virtual machine reader. Azure includes several built-in roles that you can use. For example, the virtual machine contributor roles allow users to create and manage virtual machines. If the built-in roles don't meet the specific needs of your organizations, you can create your own role called Azure Custom Roles. Next, we have scope. Scope is a set of resources that access applies to. When you assign role, you can further limit your action allowed by defining a scope. This is helpful if you want to make someone a website contributor, but only for one resource group. In Azure, you can specify scope at 4 levels: management group, subscriptions, resource group, or resources. Scope or structure in a parent-child relationship. You can assign roles at any of these levels of the scope. Finally, we have role assignment. A role assignment is a process of attaching a role definition to user, group, service, principal, or managed entity at a particular scope for purpose of granting access. Access is granted by creating a role assignment, and access is revoked by removing the role assignment. Azure Resource Locks. As an administrator, you can lock a subscriptions, resource group, or resource to prevent other users in your organization from accidentally deleting or modifying critical resources. You can set the lock level to delete or read only. Delete means authorized user can still read and modify a resource, but they can't delete a resource. Read only means authorized users can read a resource, but they can't delete or update the resource. Applying this lock is similar to restricting all authorized users to the permissions granted by the reader rule. A common concern with resource provision in Azure is that ease with which they can be deleted. A careless administrator can accidentally erase months of work with a few wrong clicks. Azure Resource Manager locks can help here. Resource Manager locks can allow organization to put a predefined structure in place that prevents accident deletion of resources in their Azure environment. Resource Manager locks can be associated with subscriptions, resource group, or resource. Locks are inherited by the child resources. When you apply a lock at a parent scope, all your resources within the scope inherit the same lock. Even resource you later add inherit a lock from the parent. The most restricted lock is inheritance takes precedence. For example, a read-only lock on SQL database logical server prevents you from deleting or modifying the server. It doesn't prevent you from creating, updating, or deleting data in database server. Azure Resource Tags. Azure tags are name value pairs that are used to organize resources in Azure portal. You can apply tags for individual resources or tag the resource group that they are part of. Implementing a proper tagging strategy can help organizations gain much better control and visibility of resources that are hosted in Azure subscriptions. Azure tagging is a feature that can leverage to logically grouping and track resources, automate the deployments, and most importantly, provide visibility on incurred cost. However, there are certain rules limitations associated with tagging. Some of the rules and limitations are: each resource can have maximum 15 tags associated with it. Resource in this case can be individual resource like virtual machines, networks, etc., or resource groups as they are part of. Tags can have a maximum number of characters for tagging. Tag name is 512 and tag value is 256. There is no inheritance hierarchy of tags. Tags you are using should help you to identify the context of resource usage. You need to use a standard naming convention for resource in order to maintain consistency in your Azure environment. Use tags early on. Ideally, when you create a resources, this will help you to manage resource more efficiently. You can also automate a tagging process using tools like PowerShell, CLI, ARM templates, etc. Finally, you can use tags for to monitor tagging practices and make amendments to naming convention and processes as needed. Assured policy. Assured policy helps you to manage and prevent IT issues with policy definitions that enforce rules and effects for your resources. The assured policy helps to enforce organizational standards and to assess complaints at a scale. Through its complaints dashboard, it provides an aggregated view to evaluate the overall state of environment, with ability to drill down the per resources per policy granularity. It also helps to bring your resource to compliance through link to bulk remediation for existing resources and automatic remediation for new resources. The common cases for Azure policy include implementing governance for resource consistency, regulatory compliance, security, cost, and management. Azure policy evaluates resource in Azure by comparing the properties of those resources to business rules. These business rules, described in JSON format, are known as policy definitions. To simplify management, several business rules can be grouped together to form a policy initiatives. Once your business rules have been formed, the policy definition or initiative is assigned to any of the scope of resources that Azure supports, such as management groups, subscriptions, resource groups, or individual resources. The assignment applies to all resources within resource manager scope of the assignment. Subscopes can be excluded if necessary. Azure policy uses JSON format to form a logic the evaluation uses to determine the resource of if it is complained or not. Definition include metadata and policy rules. Defined rule can be used function parameters, logical operator, conditions, and property analysis to match exactly the scenario you want. The policy rule determines which resource in the scope of assignment get evaluated. The basic building blocks of Azure policy are policy definitions and policy or initiative assignment. Policy definition describes the resource compliance and what effect to take when the resource is non-compliant. Example, restrict a list of locations where users can deploy a resources. Policy initiative, a policy assignment or initiative assignment describes where the policy is applied and can be resource group or subscriptions. Example, the policy to limit a list of locations where users can deploy resource is applied only to a finance teams and teams groups, resource groups and not a dev team resource group. Azure Blueprints. Azure Blueprint allows an engineer or an architect to sketch a project's design parameters. Azure Blueprint enables cloud architect and central information technology group to define a repeatable set of Azure resources that implement and adheres to an organization standards, patterns, and requirements. Azure Blueprints makes it possible for development teams to rapidly build and stand up new environment with trusted. They are building with organizational compliance with a set of built-in components such as networking to speed up development and delivery. Azure Blueprint allows IT professionals to orchestrate the deployment of resources, template and other Azure artifacts including role assignments, policy assignment, resource groups, and resource manager templates. Azure Blueprints are a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource template and other artifacts such as role assignments, policy assignments, Azure resource manager templates, and resource groups. First, we'll look at role assignments. Role assignments can be defined for the entire subscriptions or nested to a specific resource group included in the blueprint. Policy assignments. Policy assignment allows assignment of a policy or initiative to a subscriptions and a resource group. The blueprint is assigned to uh, any parameters or assigned at creation of blueprints or during a blueprint assignment. Next, we have ARM templates. Templates are used to create resource. This could range from individual deployment to entire environment. Next, we have a resource group. Resource group helps us to create a new resource group for use by other artifacts within Blueprint. This enables you to organize resource and provides scope for other artifacts. Cloud Adaptation Framework for Azure. The Microsoft Cloud Adaptation Framework for Azure is proven guidance designed to help you create and implement the business and technology strategies necessary for your organizations to succeed in the cloud. It provides the best practices, documentations, and tools that cloud architects, IT professionals, and business decision makers need to successfully achieve short term and long term objectives. By using Microsoft Cloud Adaptation Frameworks for Azure best practices, organizations can better align the business and technical strategies to ensure success. The Cloud Adaptation Framework brings together cloud adaptation best practices from Microsoft employees, partners, and customers. It provides a set of tools, guidance, and narratives that helps the shape technologies, business and people strategies for driving desired business outcomes during the cloud adaptation effort. We have different types of methods for cloud adaptation framework Azure. We start with strategy. Strategy defines the business justification and expected outcomes of adaptation. Plan. Plan helps to align actionable adaptation plans to business outcomes. Ready. It prepares the cloud environment for planned changes. Migrate. Migrate and modernize existing workloads. Innovate. Innovate helps us to develop new cloud native or hybrid solutions. Govern. Govern the environment and workloads. Manage. Manage helps operation management for cloud and hybrid solutions. Organize. Organize helps us to align the teams and tools supporting your organization cloud application efforts. Microsoft Privacy Statement. This privacy statement explains the personal data Microsoft processes, how Microsoft processes it, and for what purposes. Microsoft offers a wide range of products, including server products used to help operate enterprise worldwide, devices you use in your home, software that students use at school, and services developers use to create. Microsoft products in this statement includes Microsoft services, websites, apps, softwares, servers, and devices. Microsoft collects data from you through our interactions with you and through our products. We provide some of this data directly, and we get some of this by collecting data about your interactions, use, and experience with our products. Data we collect depends on context of your interaction with Microsoft and the choices you make, including your privacy settings and products and features you use. We also obtain data about you from third parties. You have choices when it comes to technology you use and data you share. When we ask you to provide personal data, you can decline. Many of our products require some personal data to provide you with a service. If you choose not to provide data required to provide you with a product or features, you cannot use the product or feature. Likewise, where we need to collect personal data by law or to enter into or carry out a contract with you, and you do not provide the data, we will not be able to enter into correct contract. Or if it is relates to existing products we are using, we may have to suspend or cancel it. We will notify you if this is the case at the time. Where providing the data is optional and you choose not to share personal data, features such as personalizations that use such data will not work for you. Microsoft uses data that collects to provide our products, which includes updating, securing, and troubleshooting, as well as providing support. It also includes sharing data when it's required to provide the services to carry out a transaction you request. It helps us to improve and develop our products. It helps us to personalize our products and make recommendations. You can advertise and market to you, which includes sending promotional communications, targeting advertisement, presenting you with relevant offers. It also offers Microsoft Online Service Terms and Microsoft Data Protection Amendment. Microsoft Privacy Statement is integrated with Azure Trust Center and provides you with Azure compliance documentations. It also uses in different Azure sovereign regions like Azure Government Cloud Services and Azure China Cloud Services. Azure Trust Center. The Trust Center showcases Microsoft's principles for maintaining data integrity in the cloud and how Microsoft implements and supports security, privacy, compliance, and transparency in all Microsoft Cloud products and services. The Trust Center is an important part of Microsoft Trusted Cloud initiative and provides support and resource for legal and compliance community. Azure Trust Center is a great resource for other people in organizations who might play a role in security, privacy, and compliance. These people include business managers, risk assessment, privacy officers, and legal compliance teams. The Azure Trust Center provides in-depth information about security, privacy, and compliance offerings, policy features, and practices across Microsoft Cloud products. Azure Trust Center also provides additional resources for each topic. It also provides links to security, privacy, and compliance blogs and upcoming events. Azure Storage Regions. We have three different Azure Storage regions: Azure US Government Cloud, Azure German Cloud, and China Azure Cloud. The Azure US Government Cloud services is available for government agencies and US defense located in US. It is used for compliance and security purposes. The Azure Government Cloud Services is not available to a customer to provision the resources. These are isolated and separate data centers due to various compliance and security requirements of Azure US Government Cloud Services features released in this cloud can be delayed. Azure German Cloud is a storage cloud that consists of two Azure regions that are located in Germany and make up Azure German Cloud. This is for customers within Germany that have data sovereignty requirements as managed by German laws who needs to ensure that the data and workloads stay in Germany. Being a storage cloud, Azure German Cloud regions are not available for customers in other Azure clouds to choose when provisioning resources. China Azure Cloud is a storage cloud that consists of four Azure regions that are located in China and make up China Azure Cloud. This is for customers within China that have data sovereignty requirements as mandated by Chinese law who need to ensure that data and workloads stay in China. Being a storage cloud, Azure China Cloud regions are not available for customers in other Azure clouds to choose when provisioning resources. Microsoft Azure operated by Tudun ViaNet Azure China is physically separated instances of cloud services located in China. It is independently operated and transacted by Shanghai Blue Cloud Technologies, a wholly owned subsidiary of Beijing Tudun ViaNet Broadband Data Center Corporation Limited.